Oh, good day, my dear students. Before I'm going to start on this subject, this lesson, I want to give a small recap about what we have discussed last meeting or on the last lesson. We talked about the significant factors that affects our morality. Okay? First is beliefs, kung ano yung mga paniniwala natin. Values is yung kung what is important to us. Then customs, ito yung mga palagi natin ginagawa. Tradition, ito yung mga customs na handed over from one generation to other. And culture is kasali na itong yung what um, what a society or what a group of people as a culture is doing. Lahat pagdating kasali niya dito yung mga music, yung mga arts, language, ano pa ba, mga traditions, yung mga values nila, morals ng isang culture. So, um, okay, in order to fully understand, magbibigyan na lang ako ng example, okay? So, for instance, yung isang culture, nag-value sila ng honesty. So, honesty is one of their values because it is important to them. So, if moral principle yan, it could be that always tell the truth. So, ano nga yung moral principle? Moral standard. Moral standard. So, moral standard is are standards of actions or behavior that are expected of you to do. Okay? And it defines what is right or wrong. For instance, yung values mo is honesty. So, yung moral standard ng culture niyo is always tell the truth. Okay? Another is kindness. So, a moral standard it could be kind to one another. Or, yung values niyo is fairness. Then, a moral standard is be fair at all times. Okay, so, ganun yan. Okay, so, I hope meron kayong konting naintindihan sa previous lesson. Now, moving on. So, we're going to define what moral standard is. What are moral standards? These involve the rules people have about the kinds of actions they believe are morally right and wrong, as well as the values they place on the kinds of objects they believe are morally good and morally bad. Some ethicists equate moral standards with moral values and moral principles. So, sa definition natin, parang konti lang yung pagkakaiba ng moral standards sa moral values and principles, di ba? So, another definition is moral standards are minimum social standards required for a person to be allowed to live freely in a given society. So, same pa rin. Minimum social standards. Now, in order, nakapagbigay naman ako ng example nito. So, moving on. Non-moral standards refers to the rules that are unrelated to moral or ethical considerations. Either these standards are not necessarily linked to morality or by nature lack ethical sense. Basic examples of non-moral standards include rules of etiquette. Let's say, for instance, etiquette, food etiquette. How are we going to behave sa hapagkainan? Fashion standards, roles in games, and various house rules. So, bale, ang pagkakaiba ng moral standards tsaka ng non-moral standards is kung it has a relation to a person's morality or a person's morals. Okay, if it has a relation, kung etong mga standards na ito, kung etong mga actions or mga behaviors that are expected of you to do or to act or to show involves a person's morals, then that is considered as a moral standard. Pag hindi, non-moral. Easy as pie, no? Easy peasy. Now, dito na naman tayo sa dilemma. Dito nagiging interesting ang subject na ito. A dilemma is a situation where a person is forced to choose between two or more conflicting options, neither of which is acceptable. So, a dilemma is any situation na yung tao ay napipilitang pumili between two or more conflicting options. So, conflicting talaga. Hindi pwedeng hindi siya conflicting. Okay, the key here is that the person has choices to make that will all have results she does not want. So, this makes it hard, no? Kasi kahit ano yung pipiliin niya, parang labag sa kalooban niya. And why? We will soon find out. For example, a town mayor faces a dilemma about how to protect and preserve a virgin forest and at the same time allow miners and loggers for economic development in the town. Now dito, yung town mayor is in a position in which siya yung nagmamanage ng isang town. Now he has, nasa dilemma siya kasi he is tasked to improve the economy of the town. So in order to do that, isang paraan paano mag-improve is he is going to allow miners and loggers to, let's say, to do their work. So in that if he is going to allow, the virgin forest is going to be destroyed. But at the same time, he is also tasked to protect and preserve the virgin forest. So, problema, nasa sa sitwasyon, no? Kailangan sumupili. And it doesn't matter kung unsay ang piligon. Na ang point ani is naaso sa usa ka situation and bisag unsa iyang pilion, dili siya ganahan. Okay? Or next is if a person is in a difficult situation but is not forced to choose two or more options, then that person is not in a dilemma. That person is just experiencing a problematic or distressful situation. So, klaro. Dito na naman tayo. Moral dilemmas. These are situations where persons who are called moral agents in ethics, moral agents refers to us, are forced to choose between two or more conflicting options, neither of which resolves the situation in a morally acceptable manner. For instance, sa situation na ito, isang babae buntis. Napacheck up sa doktor and the doctor found out that merong problema yung kanyang pregnancy. Abnormal yung location ng fetus. Fetus or fetus. Fetus pala. So, if she will allow the fetus to grow into a child and to let it be born into the world, there is a 100% chance that the child will die and a 100% chance that she will also die. But note, I forgot to mention, this girl, sa kanyang values, is she values life. Sa kanyang moral principle is do not kill. Now, she was advised by the doctor to, no, she was given an option by the doctor. It is either na ipagpatuloy niya, baka makahimala, or i-abort na lang niya. Mabubuhay pa siya. Papatay yung bata. But it was all up to her. Now, this situation is an example of a moral dilemma in which kung ano yung pipiliin niya, it violates her moral principle. Another situation na naman. For example, sino kaya? Si Gamar. Si Gamar, tsaka let's say, si governor niyo, si Borleo, ay best friends. Tapos, one time, pumasok si Borleo sa office ni Sartan at hindi nakita ni Borleo na nandoon pala si Gamar. So, sa office si Sartan, may pera doon. So, kinuha ni Mark, ninakaw niya, knowing that hindi yun sa kanya at kay Sartan yun. So, Borleo committed a theft. But hindi niya alam na nandoon si Gamar. So, pagbalik ni Sartan, tinanong niya si Gamar, "Oy, Gamar, nakita mo ba yung pera ko dito? Dito ko lang yung nilagay. Although nakita mo, you are now in a moral dilemma." Kasi first, na-mention ko na si Borleo is your best friend. So, kasali yon sa values mo. You value friendship and you value honesty. Now, if you value friendship, for example, yung moral standard ng culture nyo is to defend your friends. Next is, yung sa honesty is always tell the truth. So, ano yung pipiliin mo? Are you going to sell out your friend, which can affect your friendship, or are you going to lie, which can affect your honesty? The point here is not to tell you on what to choose. It is up to you kung ano yung pipiliin mo based on your values and your moral principles and the moral standards of your culture or society. So there are plenty of situations na in which na etong katulad nito mga moral dilemmas that can really change your moral principles na akala mo, let's say, hindi ka magsisinungaling or you are not going to cheat. Ganon. Pero pagdating ng panahon, you will face situations like this. Okay? Now, this subject is to help you, to guide you on or to wake you up in order for you to know what you are going to do in the future. Okay? And to reflect on your experiences. Okay? Moving on. 3 conditions that must be present to be considered a moral dilemma. First, the person or the agent of a moral action is obliged to make a decision about which course of action is best. So, kailangan siyang mamili. There must be different courses of action to choose from. Kailangan siyang mamili sa at least dalawa. No matter what course of action is taken, some moral principles are always compromised. Kailangan siyang mamili sa dalawa or more, pero kung ano yung hindi niya pinili, maaapektuhan yung kanyang prinsipyo. Okay? So, if present yung tatlo, then that is a moral dilemma. Pero, kung wala yung, it does not affect your moral principles, then that is just a normal dilemma. Okay, moving on. There's no perfect solution to the problem. According to Benjamin Labastine, people, us, seems fated to commit something wrong, which implies that she is bound to morally fail, because in one way or another, she will fail to do something which she ought to do. In other words, by choosing one of the possible moral requirements, the person also fails on the others. Grabe no, lalong kayo no? Murag we are destined to violate our own moral principles, but do not fear. We are getting mature, so basically time will come that even though we have plenty of moral dilemmas in our hands, we will be able to know what choice to make. Okay? Now, there are three levels of not delinquency, moral dilemmas. Now, there are three levels of moral dilemmas. First is the individual, second, organizational, and third is systemic. In the individual, moral dilemma affects only the individual. Sa organizational, sa isang organization, and sa systemic is the majority. Usually involves the society or the whole nation. Now, an example. For instance, yung sa individual, yung kanina, kay Gamar tsaka kay Borleo. So, yung moral dilemma na yun, it only affects Gamar. Okay? For instance, dito na naman tayo sa organizational. Let's say, as, let's say, for instance, as teachers, for instance lang is just hypothetical, is just an example. So, this is not true and will never be true. Bawal sa mga teachers magkaroon ng relationship sa kanyang students. So, basically, if a teacher has authority over a student, bawal yon. That is immoral. But if yung student, yung teacher has no authority sa rules, hindi bawal yon. But morally speaking, bawal pa rin. Okay? So, yung morals kasi natin is not written. Laws are not morals. Procedures are not morals. Guidelines are not morals. So, dito sa organizational, it affects the whole organization. So, for instance, yung teacher is nagkaroon ng relationship sa isang student. I'm not going to make myself as an example na. So, for example, yung teacher na yon is nalaman ni Sir Tan, kilala ni Sir Tan, at saka alam niya kung ano yung buong katotohanan. Now, Sir Tan is faced with a moral dilemma of telling the truth or keeping the truth in order to protect the teacher. Kasi kung malalaman na totoo, pwedeng mawala ng trabaho yung teacher. So, hindi natin alam kung baka lang isa sa moral standard ko is to value peers. So, I am now, apektado yung moral principle ko. So, in this case, yung organization ang involved. Okay? I will not give a choice kung ano yung pipiliin ko. Basta, what I'm trying to emphasize here is kung sino yung maaapektuhan. Yung organization ba or your individual. Pwede rin yung moral principle natin is the integrity of the school and its employees. Or, sa baking, the friendship between me and the teacher. So, pwede din ganon. Okay? Now, dito na naman tayo sa systemic. Moral dilemma affects the majority. So, sa karamihan. Kadalasan, dito is, for instance, sa panahon ngayon, we are we have seen and experienced etong war against drugs. Diba? So, we all know that it is part of our moral principle that it is not good to kill. So, pero it is also part of, yung, for instance, yung si Duterte, war on drugs siya, of course, merong mamamatay, lalo na yung mga drug lords. So, yung morality ng whole nation ang naaapektuhan. Okay? Okay, para mas maging clear, eto na lang. Scratch that. Death penalty. Okay, klaro. If i-approve ni Duterte yung death penalty, so it affects the entire nation. So, nasa dilemma siya. Is he going to give proper punishment to criminals, which is death, or is he going to value life even though hardcore criminals sila? So, yung decision niya sa moral dilemma na ito affects the entire nation. Okay? So, these 3 levels of dilemmas talks about kung sino yung maaapektuhan sa desisyon. It could be that one person lang yung nagdesisyon pero yung dito sa individual, siya lang naapektuhan, organizational, yung whole organization, systemic, yung whole nation ang naapektuhan. Okay? Now, moving on. Why is freedom crucial in our ability to make moral decisions? Bakit nga? What is freedom? Freedom is the status of willingly able to choose something or to do something or to speak something or even to think something. So, hindi constrained, hindi restricted. But according dito, freedom is not absolute. Having no freedom is the same as not having a choice. Freedom is the foundation of morality. Now, think about it. Kung wala kang freedom sa pagpili ng desisyon, do you think ma-apply mo yung kung ano yung pipiliin mo? Hindi. Meron ka ngang freedom pero limitado lang. For instance, doon sa kay Gamar tsaka kay Borleo, you are free to choose kung ano yung gagawin mo sa dalawa. Pero constricted lang, limitado lang yung kung ano yung gusto mong kalalabasan. But meron kang choice. Kaya nga tinatawag na moral decision kasi you have to make a decision. If you cannot make a decision, then you do not have a choice. No? You have the choice on the situation, but the outcome, you do not have the choice. Now, according dito, it is the foundation of morality. So you cannot exercise moral decision making if wala kang choice. Okay? Next topic is reason and impartiality. Minimum requirements for morality. Reason. Reason is the ability of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments by a process of logic. It is the innate and exclusive human ability that utilizes new or existing information as basis to consciously make sense out of things while applying logic. It is also associated with thinking, cognition, and intellect. So, reason is ano, yung parang logic din. It is a process. Okay? Reason and impartiality becomes the basic prerequisite for morality, as one is expected to be able to deliver clear, concise, rightful, and appropriate judgments made out of logic and understanding in an unbiased and unprejudiced manner while considering the general welfare to accurately concoct moral decisions. So, reason and impartiality. If yung decision mo is not backed up with reason, then you did not make a moral judgment. No, nagpatara ra kag himong desisyon. So, it could be that, ano, what we call this, kung for instance, you, in that case, kung hindi affected yung morality mo, then you are not, you were not in a moral dilemma in the first place. Since affected yung moral principle mo, dapat yung moral judgment mo should be reasonable and impartial. Okay? Now, 7-step moral reasoning model. So, in case nga maka-meet kayo ng you are in a situation in which you have to make a moral judgment, this is a guide kung paano nyo pipiliin. Okay? First is state or identify the problem. The individual will be able to assess the main issue at stake in this case, and will later be able to bottleneck the possible options to create the most appropriate and just decision. So, i-identify nyo muna yung problem bago kayo maggawa ng decision. Next is gathering and assessing relevant facts in the case. This is where the focus is shifted to analyzing non-ethical issues linked with the case. For instance, if one is facing an ordeal of creating a moral decision regarding the opening of a bar which will employ minor-aged women to give them opportunity to earn money, the law shall also be considered, besides the ethicality or morality of the issue at hand. So of course, yung mga unethical issues or mga factors that can affect should can affect your moral decision and moral judgment should also be considered in this case yung law. Even though yung judgment mo na bibigyan ng trabaho, yung mga minors, but since it affects the law, so it should be considered. Okay? I'm not saying na hindi mo yun itutuloy. I'm just saying na you consider it. It is up to you kung itutuloy mo or hindi. At least you have considered. Okay? Next is identifying the stakeholders. This is essentially the stage where an individual would generate a list of individuals, parties, or entities that will be affected by the decision. So dito na magagamit yung pag-identify natin kung ano yung level of moral dilemma. Next is develop a list of at least 5 options. This will encompass a higher probability of creating the best decision since the options will be used as guidelines to bolster and strengthen the final decision. This will also allow a capacious understanding of the issue. So, ano lang, simple list lang ng mga options kung ano yung pwede mong gawin. Then, the process of elimination kung ano yung hanggang sa dumating ka sa pinaka the best na decision na pwede mong i-apply. Next is test the options. Harm test. Is it the least harmful choice? Publicity test. Can this option be made public? Defensibility test. Is it justifiable in from a contending party? Okay, so dito sa defensibility, in case na merong mag-question, can you defend it? Reversibility, will it still remain a good option if I were adversely affected by it? Grabe to. Reversibility test. What if ikaw yung nasa sitwasyon na yon, tapos ibang tao yung pipili, gagawa ng moral decision? Next is virtue test. What would I become if I choose this option often? Wow, dito. If you are forced to disregard your moral principle of being honest at all times, you can never consider yourself as honest na. I'm a bad liar. Now, colleague test. What are the reactions of my colleagues regarding these options? So you have to consider kung ano yung iisipin ng iba. Professional test. Opinion of profession's ethics committee. Organization test. Opinion of the organization's ethics officer. So next is make a tentative choice based. Now that the individual has tested all his options, acquired in-depth realizations and knowledge regarding the issue and possible solution, it is now time to identify the possible best solution. So deduction na. Ititest mo na kung ano yung the best na talaga na choice. Next is make the final choice. The final choice will only be accomplished after reviewing all the options, the issue at hand, those who will be affected by it, and its non-ethical facet of the issue. So grabe, no? Even though there are steps, parang by common sense lang tong mga steps na to. Ang sa'yo lang is you have to list down kung ano yung mga possible choices. You have to consider kung sino yung maapektuhan. Tapos yung different tests. Isa na yung paano kung ikaw yung nasa sitwasyon, yung ibang tao yung pipili. Then after ka pipili ng final choice, 7 steps para 7 unclear moral reasoning model. I'm sorry sa author pero even I am having a hard time to come up with a solution. Come up with a solution based on these steps. Okay. Well, anyway, you can use this or not. Now, for the for the sake of guidance, well, you can use this, okay, as a guide. Okay. Moral courage. Moral courage is the quality of standing firm or staunch about your moral decision and being immune to the influence of the opposite party. Pellucid in circumstances where the majority follows a not necessarily morally right decision, but a small group, the minority per se, still choose to fight what they think is morally right despite of the possible social costs. Now dito, moral courage, you have the courage enough to choose. Enough, enough. You have the courage enough to choose kung ano yung sa tingin mo ang tamang desisyon. Okay? Let's say you already weighed the the effects of your choice. Tanan, ano na, you already considered lots of things na. But then, in the end, ano, iba yung pinili mo against sa kung ano yung dapat yung moral judgment mo. So you do not have the moral courage. Dapat kung ano yung what you think is right, you must stand firm. You must go for it. Okay? Well, that is moral courage. According to Vice Admiral William Lawrence, is the ability to know right from wrong, to possess a firm set of values, to obtain the strength to live by those values, to do what is right regardless of the consequences. So, for example dito, natatakot ka doon sa example ni Berleo at saka kay Gamar. Natatakot si Gamar na ano, na mawala yung friendship nila ni Berleo. So he must live with it. He must have the moral courage to tell the truth. Pero kung para sa kanya, he values their friendship so much kasi best friends sila. So he must have the moral courage to live, to continue with their friendship knowing na siya yung nagnakaw tsaka ano, nakapagsinungaling siya. Okay? So, whatever choice, whatever moral judgment a person will arrive, you must have the moral courage to face its consequences and to choose. Okay? Possessing moral courage is imperative and paramount as it allows one to live a life filled with happiness and bereft of any form of regrets. To jeopardize one's career or relationship with other people just to stand staunch by their moral decision is a highly commendable act. So, bahalang maguba imong career, ang relasyon sa mga laing tao, it is a commendable act kanang mo stand by you kasi imong moral decision. Okay? Having moral courage is also a harbinger of integrity to defend one's deeply held principles. Okay? So, dapat kung unsa gyud nang kanang naka-foundation na gyud nato nga mga moral principles, if we have moral courage, dapat di kita maparog. Unless kung ang mga options is the conflict. Duha ka buk options and both kung pilion nimo usa against pud sa usa ka principle na patay, you really have to choose one. Okay? And you have to live with it courageously. Okay? Next is will. Will is the faculty of the mind responsible for selecting the currently strongest desire that the individual personally covet to acquire or achieve. Related to willpower or the ability to resist temptations in order to achieve desires that are considered as long-term goals and withstand pressure or any form of adversity. Now, will is related to moral courage. Moral courage is yung kung unsa gyud imong gusto, kung unsa gyud ang imuhang prinsipyo. So will is na kanang it is a strength to choose. Okay? Yung the willpower or the ability to resist temptations, dapat temptations or influences. So if you have the if you have the what we call this will to make a moral judgment, that moral judgment or a moral judgment, then you are nang hindi ka maparog, di ka madala sa mga sa imong emosyon, you thought of it logically, then what you did is a willful and a courageous moral act. Okay? So, why is will as important as reason? Wala na ito. So, ganito na lang. Since we are directed na gumamit ng MS Teams. So, for this week, I think mga Wednesday, we're going to start with MS Teams. So, kung ano yung schedule ng time natin or so we have to be online na lang. Okay, so gano'n na lang siguro, no? Pero yung mga activities natin, kasi wala pa naman tayong update kung okay na ba kung pwede na ba mag-quiz or mag-exam sa MS Teams. So, na lang, what you call this? Sa classroom pa rin tayo. But do not worry, I will guide you thoroughly kung through Facebook group pa rin tayo mag magagawa ng announcements. And pala, eto na pala yung coverage ng midterm natin, okay? So, from the first video hanggang dito, I am not going to try to give you a hard time kasi naman ito, this is not a major subject, but I'm not saying that this is not important because mas kailangan na natin yung ethics sa panahon ngayon, especially kayo mga criminology na future police officers. Kailangan yung ethics. Okay, so na lang, maghintay na lang kayo sa pag-release ko ng midterm exam, okay? So, till next time, bye-bye.